Okay, well, the first thing I did was basically scraped all the cream out of the inside of a bunch of Oreos, stuck them in a plastic Ziploc baggie right here, and took a rolling pin and basically kept rolling over it and rolling over it until it was finely ground. This is, I don't know if you can tell this, but this is a slightly larger cheesecake spring pan than the one that you used. This is the next size up, so I'm using 15 ounces of Oreos and I'm going to say about 9 ounces, or yeah, 9 ounces of the butter instead of the 6 that it was called, or 9 tablespoons instead of the 6. I tried to do the math, but I think 10 would have been too sloppy. So what you see here is basically step 1, ground up Oreos, or what do you call it, graham cracker crumbs, finely ground, mixed with the butter. Larger spring pan. I've already preheated the oven to 325 degrees, and I'm getting ready to throw this on top of a cookie sheet, and we're going to cook this for 10 minutes and pull it out and move on to the next step. See you in a bit. Okay, so the next step, I've already measured out the cup and a half of sugar and the half a teaspoon of salt that's already in here. And in the meantime, a trick I learned over the years is don't put chocolate in a pan right over top of a hot burner. You put a pan underneath it so that you don't singe or burn the chocolate, and it'll come out nice and smooth without the worry of it having any burnt flavor or anything to it. So it's basically 2 containers, 4 ounces each of the Baker's semi-sweet chocolate to get your total of 8 ounces. And I just started that. I'm getting ready to start mixing up the other stuff here in just a minute. So stand by. Okay, I just got the timer to go off at the 10-minute mark for the, you know what, I'm going to leave it in there just a little bit longer because it's a bigger crust, and I think it could stand a little bit more cooking as long as I don't forget about it. So sometimes you have to improvise in these things. And I've also got 4 bars of Philadelphia cream cheese, or whatever kind you're using, just like the instructions say. So I'm going to throw that in the mixing bowl over there and start mixing her up and see how she goes. Okay, it says to mix the cream cheese, sugar, and salt till smooth. So, putting all that in there. You know what? I'm going to wait a minute to put the last one in, just so that I don't make a giant mess, and I can put it in a little bit at a time. So, here we go. See you in a minute. Okay, I just put the last of the 4 bars in there, mixing it up until smooth, like it says. Once it's all nice and smooth, then I'll put the melted chocolate in there along with the other ingredients, just like the instructions say. Okay, so it's smooth just like they suggest, and now I'm going to add the 4 eggs and the then the sour cream, and then the chocolate. We'll blend it all up, scrape the bowl, and we'll work on the spring pan and all that crap here in a minute. Okay, one of the other tricks I like to do is I take a separate bowl, break the eggs into the bowl to make sure that you don't have any broken eggshells before you start throwing it in there. I also like to pre-measure my ingredients. I didn't do that with the sugar, but this is 1 cup of the sour cream. I got the heavy-duty sour cream you got there. And so we're going to throw these in there, and then we'll throw the chocolate in there and move on to the next step. Like so. Okay. Here we go. A mess here out of this stuff too. I also don't do a lot of videos, so bear with me. Pretty well. Yeah. A little bit of scraping going on here. Not much. Okay. That's it. Like so. Now, next. Okay, what's next? Then the chocolate. Alright, we're going to do a little bit of a scrapey scrape here. Get the edges done a little more, a little better. Like so. Almost looks like a soggy cheesecake. Nice. I don't have a large workspace in this kitchen, so you really have to have a certain amount of dedication here. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, let's put this back in the fridge. Now, let's check on the chocolate. Nice. Okay. And what I did here was I let the water come to a boil. And I started letting the chocolate melt, and then I turned it down as low as it'll go without it being all the way turned off. So we're going to turn that off. We're going to add our chocolate. See, it's just it's a steam bath for your chocolate, just like the steam bath we're going to make for the cheesecake itself. So be back in a second. Okay, here we go. Chocolate's in there. It's been scraped out with the rubber chicken. Here we go. Okay, since I'm using a larger pan, and even the regular size pan I do this for, I've got 2 pieces of tin foil, and I'm going to kind of meld these 2 together to help keep the water from leaking in onto the cheesecake. So here in a minute you'll see what I'm talking about. As you can see, I've got the 2 pieces of tin foil folded together at the bottom here. I'm probably going to fold it one more time, and then I'm going to wrap it around the bottom of the spring pan. Okay, I've got the foil on the bottom of the spring pan. I'm going to work my way around it and get it all folded up around it so that it doesn't leak in water when I'm getting ready to do all this. Okay, one other thing that you should be doing while you're wrapping up your spring pan here like this is getting some water and boiling it so that you can put it in the roasting pan around the spring pan for your steam bath, or your cheesecake bath as it's cooking. It helps keeps the moisture into the cheesecake as it's baking. Here we go. We're starting to add the cheesecake mix into the spring pan. This is going to take 2 hands. Pretty sure. Okay, so it looks like using the larger spring pan is the way to go, because other than the crust, all the other ingredients are the same amount as the recipe that I had used earlier. And as you can see, we're using all of it this time. So this is for the birthday / graduation party, and I'm really hoping that everything turns out. And yeah, it's looking pretty good. And I know that sometimes you people like to use that KitchenAid the KitchenAid mixer, but sometimes the old-fashioned way with the old hand mixer is the way to go. And I don't know, maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but I'm pretty meticulous about this stuff sometimes. So, alright, on to the next step. Okay, I've got it in the roasting pan now, and my water is boiling. We're only going to fill it up halfway, so I'm hoping that the water that I'm boiling is enough to do that, because I don't want to have to do this twice. And I think the other thing is I'm gonna put it in the oven before I start to try and put the water on it, because it's going to be a real pain in the butt. Okay, I actually had a little bit of water left to spare. I don't want to take it up too high because the foil is kind of a mishmash when you get to the top of it there. So that's as good as that's going to get. We're going to put this, push it back into the oven like so. Close her up. What's the next step? 1 hour, I think. Halfway up the spring pan. Do not bake until set. 1 hour. 1 hour. 20 after 11 it's going to be. And then once it's done baking, it's not done baking, you leave it in there for another hour, and after that hour then you can take it out. So I knew this was going to be one of those things. And here we go. Okay, it's almost 11:30 and the cheesecake is still baking in the oven. I decided to take a calculated risk. It is a slightly larger spring pan, so I'm cooking it at full power at 325 for an extra 10 minutes. It's close enough to the 10-minute mark now. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. So, it's done baking, but Now that the oven is off, do not open the oven door. Under no circumstances do you open this door. This stays closed for another hour. And in an hour from now, at midnight 30, we'll open her up and on to the next step. But it stays in there for another hour. It's part of the baking process that it stays in there with this door closed. So, have at that. Okay, well, time's up. We're opening up the oven now. Pull this thing out here. Alright, so I'm going to pull that out. It says to run a knife around the edge, leave it in the spring pan, and leave it to cool on a wire rack. That's exactly what we're going to do. Okay, there was a lot of water on the inside of the tin foil, so I don't know how good this is going to turn out when the time comes. But we're going to let this sit to cool on the wire rack like it says to do, and we'll let it cool all the way. We'll cover it up overnight, and then we'll stick it in the fridge, and we'll put the ganache on top in the morning. Okay, it is the following day. And according to the instructions, you're supposed to let it cool down to room temperature until it becomes room temperature. So I wrapped it up and put it on the wire rack. And then I went to bed with it covered. And then this morning I stuck it in the fridge for 6 hours, just like it says. So 6+ hours later, it's covered loosely. And here's the finished final product. And I'm a little nervous about how much water may have gotten into this. So we're going to see just what's what here. You know what? I think I'm going to run a knife around it just one more time, just to make sure that everything is what it's going to be. So bear with me. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Nobody knows exactly how this is going to turn out. Here goes. Okay. Okay, as you can see, there's a little bit of dampness on the inner ring there, but overall, this looks like a really good cheesecake. Nice and firm. So next step is we're going to measure out a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. We're going to let it come to a boil, and then we're going to add 4 ounces of a different brand of bittersweet chocolate for the ganache. Semi-sweet chocolate, excuse me. So we're going to take our measurements and on to the next step. Okay, here is half a cup of heavy whipping cream. We're going to bring this to a boil, and as soon as she starts boiling, we're going to take it away from the heat, and then we're going to add the chocolate. I've already broken up the chocolate because the smaller the chunks of chocolate, the faster and easier it is to mix it in to make the ganache. So here we go. Got the heat up way high. Hopefully we don't burn it all, but we'll just start stirring her up a little bit. Once she starts boiling, add the chocolate, and on to the next thing. One other thing, if you're going to bring it to a rapid boil on a high heat like this, make sure you are stirring it constantly so that you don't scorch the heavy whipping cream. You don't want that burnt, charred flavor to it. You just want it on long enough that it's going to start bubbling up, and then take it away from the heat. Okay, as you can see, she's already starting to boil up like this. That's in pretty good shape. Starting to bubble up and all that. So, okay, take it away from the heat. Like so. Turn that off. And then stir until melted. All that goes in there. Just like so. I'll get all this to melt and meld together. And then it says to, once it's all mixed together, let it set for 2 to 5 minutes until it starts to set up a little bit. And then we'll throw it on top of the cheesecake, and that is your ganache. We're running down to the end of this, folks. Looking pretty good. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've let the ganache set up for about 5 minutes, and now it's time to add it to the center of the cheesecake. Go. More or less. Okay, scrape the pan out. Now we're just going to frost the top of the cheesecake with the ganache and get it kind of close to the edge. We want to try and keep about 1 inch away from the edge as best as we can. And then we'll throw it back in the fridge to set up a little bit. We'll cover it up somehow, probably put it in a container. And then tomorrow, I might even throw it in the freezer for maybe a half an hour so that it'll be more set up for the 2-hour trip to get to the destination. But I think it's going to turn out okay. I think the bottom, the crust, might be a little soft because I think that the water might have gotten into it a little bit. But that doesn't really affect the flavor that much. I don't know. I think we'll do another video when we get up to the party tomorrow and see how it all shakes out. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this cheesecake, and I hope everybody else is happy with it too when we get there. So eventually I'm going to stick all these videos together so you can see step by step how to do everything. Do a little bit of editing and set it up for watching on a phone instead of like a computer, and enjoy. That's how you make a chocolate ganache cheesecake, I hope.